Welcome to a new video. In this video, we're going to go over the higher time frame flow. This is basically like your SOP. So you have to go through the process, and depending on what happens next, then you just go through the filters. Okay. And depending on each scenario, you'll know what to do to complete the trade. Okay. So this is not going to be about storyline. This is going to be about the flow of how you go into trades. Okay. This is just going to be on higher time frame. We'll do another lower time frame one. And then we'll get into storyline and all that good stuff. Okay. So your higher time frame, monthly, daily, weekly, right? Or whatever you're using as your higher time frame. But in these examples, we're going to be using monthly, weekly, and daily. Okay. So after you find your higher time frame, monthly, weekly, and daily support and resistance levels, okay, which is just your shape, where you have a high and then a downward movement, right? You want to mark that. After finding that, to consider that high strong, you need to find your SBR or RBS. Support becomes resistance, or resistance becomes support. So let's say you have a, for example, let's say you have a daily swing point right here. Then you have your pullback and then your rally through, okay? This right here, your SBR, makes this level strong, okay? So this level now becomes strong. If it didn't have this and it was just a straight line, it's not strong, okay? It's just a support level. We need to have that break and retest like that. It doesn't need to retest, it just needs to have that break. That resistance becomes support at that level, okay? This will make this strong. So once you find that, you have found your SBR and RBS. After we find that, we look at the rejection zones, which is the body close to the wick. Okay, so for example, here we would have a wick below our support, and then we'd have our wick above this and our wick below this. Okay, these are the zones you're going to be highlighting. So you have a zone here, you have a zone here, and then you have a break and retest zone. So these are your rejection zones. Rejection, rejection, and then this is your support, your resistance becomes support zone, okay? Wait for price to reach the rejection zone. So after price comes into it on the lower time frame, right? So if we're using daily, weekly, monthly, if we're using monthly, we need to wait for weekly. If we're using weekly, we need to wait for daily. Using daily, we need to wait for H4. So H4, as price is coming in to these levels, we're paying attention on the H4 time frame. Okay, so if price decides to come in here, we're looking at H4. Okay. So at that point, once price reaches our rejection zone, we need to see a breakout or rejection on the daily or H4, right? In our case, we'll just use the daily as our higher time frame. So we're looking for an H4 rejection or breakout. So if H4 comes in here and rejects, okay, then we can move along. If it doesn't and it just breaks out instead, okay, then we can look at our next zone below and then wait for the same thing. If that doesn't happen, then we wait for H4 again down here. Okay, this is going to save you from taking a lot of losses, okay, by just waiting and being patient. Okay, so in the case we do have a rejection, we're just going to look for a simple engulfing pattern. Okay, so at this point, let's say here we have a candlestick and then another candlestick. Okay, so right here we're rejecting. Okay, we're rejecting that support level, right, within our engulfing with our engulfing pattern. Here we're going to be looking for at this point, since we have our engulfing, we can look for our setup, right? So here we're going to be looking for our setups in H1, M30, M15, M5, your first QMR or your continuation. Okay, so let's say you miss it and there's a continuation pattern, we can take that. After we have that H4 engulfing, we find the setup, then we need to find confirmation, which was in yesterday's video. Okay, once you find that engulfing pattern, okay, on the lower time frame, whatever setup that you see it is, we just need to make sure that that is there as well, and then we can take the trade higher. Okay, we're not going to talk about where to exit the trade or whatnot yet. Okay, that's later down the line. For now, I just want you to understand the setups. Okay. Now, let's say instead of price rejecting, let's say it breaks out. So at this point here, right? Let me raise this a bit. Okay, we understand that this is now going to be a rejection zone, right? This is a rejection zone, but price came through and broke out. Okay, so we have a breakout. What do we have to do on the breakout is find where the SBR or RBS is, which is right here, okay? Because this was RBS, and then now it's SBR, right? Because this was support now becoming resistance. So we would look at that zone right here, like this, okay? At this point, what we need to do is mark the rejection zones body to wick. So this is our rejection zone, right? Our original rejection zone. We still have that marked. And what we got to do next is look for H4 candlestick closes outside of the rejection zone. So if this is our rejection zone, what we need is another engulfing here. Okay, engulfing pattern like this, closing outside of the zone. Okay, let me just remove this real quick. Okay, so this would be an engulfing. If you can see that. So this engulfing outside of our rejection zone on our H4, okay? If there is an engulfing pattern, then we just continue down and we look for the engulfing, which is, this is already our engulfing right here. We would highlight that and then go and look for the setup, H1, M30, M15, blah, 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 and then find the confirmation and continue the flow. Now, let's say there is no engulfing pattern. So let's just say price is just still playing around in this area without any engulfing. You wait for price to return to the breakout zone, okay? So what does that mean? So if we don't have that engulfing, okay? Let's say price did this, right? And we didn't have, or we had that engulfing, we can find the trade there. But if price doesn't have an engulfing, what we have to do is wait for price, even if it closes outside of it, to retest the zone one more time and form another engulfing. Okay. H4, H1 encloses outside of the zone as a retest. Okay. So at this point, right, if we had no engulfing at this level, we'd wait for price to come out and then form the engulfing and then look for the trade at confirmation, with confirmation and all that. Okay, so we'd wait for the zone to retest again with an H4, H1 engulfing, and then we'd come back down and look for our setups, continuations, first QMR, find confirmation, and complete the trade. Okay, so that's how that would work. And in the next video, we'll show you some live examples of that, and then we'll go into the lower time frame stuff and then storyline and all the rest of it.